All right, well, we got a really exciting guest here for Talent Talks today. We have Nichole Schmidt from HR Reward Strategies. She has 20 plus years of working in compensation and benefits, at the corporate level. And one of the big topics we wanted to address in this one is, as an organization is trying to find the best talent, passive candidates, people that aren't actively looking, how do you align that with a compensation strategy? Right, it's a big topic. We hear it all the time, and so we wanted to have Nichole come in here and share some of her thoughts and beliefs with us. And so, Nichole, we're excited to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the group. I've had a lot of different experiences when I'm working with the recruitment area, the recruiting area, and they're trying to bring in these highly competitive jobs. A lot of them may be in the IT side for a lot of technical work, but sometimes it's accounting, sometimes it's engineering. So it could be a lot of different areas where you really need to get that talent. And compared to the people who are on your teams, there's a disconnect. And so what are some of the things that you can do as compensation professionals or as your HR generalists? How do you handle those situations? So I kind of boiled it down to maybe 4 key areas where you'd want to look at that the requisition that you're working off of to try to hire a candidate. And I'm assuming maybe you have a candidate that's asking, and it's a good candidate. Some of the assumptions are it's a really great candidate and they have everything that's in the requisition, but it's more than what you're willing to pay or more than what you had planned to pay. So 4 key areas would be, you want to assess those job requirements that you're posting for the job. Do some salary survey comparison, and I'll go into each of these different areas in more depth in just 1 second, unless Ben has questions along the way. But assess job requirements, do your salary survey, your market comparisons, review the current employees, both base and total cash compensation, and then also assess the total compensation package as a whole, not only base, bonus, but maybe there's some other forms of perks you could put in or some other work-life balance issues that are playing more and more favor to candidates who are coming in. So to start out, assessing the job requirements, one of the things is, do the requirements that you're asking for, are these higher than, or does the person who's coming in have a higher skill set than what you really need for the job? Possibly that person is asking for a higher dollar value because you think they're a great candidate, but are the job requirements really appropriate to what the needs are to the organization? If so, well, maybe you need to pay a premium for this person more, and that kind of flows into number 3 about the current employees, but maybe you do need to pay a premium for that person. You want to look at the salary survey data. Now, granted, a lot of times it can be stale, a lot of times it can be older, but you have to remember that in salary survey data, you're always looking at median rates of pay. And what I found most recently in some of our candidate searches is that, it's a supply and demand market. When we have low unemployment rates, and there's a lot of people looking for jobs and you want to get that best candidate, you may have to pay up. You may have to pay up in the upper end of the range. Hopefully you don't have to pay over the top of the range, because then that really skews your internal comparisons. But you want to be able to at least benchmark the job to published salary survey data. When I say published salary survey, that's the Mercers of the world, the Willis Towers Watson, those objective salary survey sources that aren't really trade groups driven or individual incumbent driven. Those reputable sources are really what'll give you the most fair and organizational reported salaries. So you're going to look at median rates of pay, and there again too, you may need to pay at the 75th percentile of that market data to get this candidate. If you're hearing that all the candidates are that high, all the candidates that are applying for the job are at that high level, well, then you may want to look at in depth, maybe my market data isn't right. What we've had to do in the past organization I worked with, we didn't go to just the general Willis, Towers Watson, and Mercer. We went to Gartner salary survey. We went to some other of these Culpeper IT surveys where it's just those jobs. And you can, if you just need a job, you can market price. You don't have to buy the whole survey. You can just market price that one job. And maybe, yeah, so so then the third thing would be looking at the total compensation of the group. So in a second, then I'll give you an example of kind of how this would work in your own organization. Because if you do end up finding that you need to bring in this person higher than what your current people are being paid, then you really need to do some compression analysis. Yeah, is the person who's coming in doing more than what the people are who are on your team? If they're doing really that same job, well, then you have what's called compression. And compression is where the people on your team are being paid significantly less than what you need to pay to get somebody from the outside. Well, then we need to kind of work on what kind of strategy can we build in, because maybe you just have loyal employees, but it's not fair to be paying your current employees less than what you may end up paying for this candidate. Does that make sense? I mean, Ben, do you have any questions along the way?
No, I have a few. Maybe if there's your last point, but I want to dive into kind of that live example and just talk through that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So let's take a break there. So let's look at, let's say, for example, and what this happened in real life. One of the situations I had is that we had a candidate who was asking for a salary of $105,000 for a business analyst role. And so it was pretty technical. They needed to have a lot of knowledge about the business, but they also needed to have a lot of knowledge about what the technical skills were needed and how we can marry those two pieces of the operations of our team. So you have someone who has technical knowledge, has business knowledge, and our current staff is making somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000. The candidate who we really love, we really want, is asking 105. So what do we do? So as I talked about, step one, looking at those job requirements, and are they equivalent to what you really need for the job? Or are you just going to pay up because this person brings so many extra things, and that's a premium. That's more than what you really need for the job, but that's okay. In the salary survey data, and particularly for a job like this, there's always going to be multiple levels of business analysts. We have a level 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, from the survey data that I just grabbed. Could it be, and maybe you have all your people at a business analyst 2 or a business systems analyst, maybe 2, but this person is a 4. And so you really need to assess, are my people being underpaid? Are they doing the work of a business analyst 2, which really says 2 to 4 years of experience, which is just kind of a key. It's not really necessarily just because you have more than 4 years of experience, you bump into the level 3. It's really that level of responsibility, level of accountability. Maybe it's the area, the division that they manage or they do support work for. Maybe they're more high profile, more complicated. So I think, and in the situation that, this real life situation that I went through, it really was more that the candidate they wanted to bring in, they wanted him in this case, to have a really strong sense of this one system, and I don't recall what system it was that they were working with, but a really high level competitive skill set that no one else on the team had. And I had a lot to do with SAP, so that was part of it too. A lot of the people on the team were just learning SAP. They needed somebody who could hit the ground running, run and work with this SAP system. So we really determined that the candidate that we're bringing in was really bringing in more of a skill set of a business analyst 4, compared to what we had, 2s for the rest of the people. Now, there was a couple of people who were borderline, maybe moving up and learning SAP in this case, or some other of those unique systems. Well, maybe a couple of those should move into that level 3. They didn't have to jump from 80,000 to 105, but it did take us take an opportunity to step back and say, well, maybe we should be paying more for some of our people, assess, and in the example that that Ben and I talked about earlier, maybe you have like 6 or 7 people in that job currently. This person brings SAP and this, and these other skills. And I think we're willing to pay up because we can justify. And the big thing is to justify ROI. Are we getting the return from an organizational perspective for that extra, it could be up to, maybe $20,000 for this person. So we want to make sure that we can sell that to our senior leaders, sell that to the accounting budgeting folks who may be caught off guard by that. So those are all internal discussions that need to have. But if you have the salary survey data, it's not just hearsay of that candidates who are coming in are all asking for that. That's on both sides of the house, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, that data's stale. Well, it is and it isn't. Maybe you're just not matching to the right job. So so that situation would give you that opportunity to do a compression analysis. Look at your current people, see how much they are lower to that new market data or lower to the person you're bringing in, and set up a game plan. It's not realistic to say you're going to just pop everybody 15 or 10, 15 or even $20,000 salary, but as long as you can be upfront with your team. Somehow, we always told people, don't talk about your salary. don't tell everybody what you're making, but somehow it comes out, in one shape or form. So you just want to be aware from a management perspective on what the market is, and just not that you're going to tell people that this is what the new guy came in at, but to say we're looking at or doing a market analysis and trying to be upfront and coming up with a strategy. Maybe it's over the next year, every 3 to 6 months, are going to give you a market adjustment rate.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little deeper. So, so would it be your advice that, all right, we've determined that we can have categories, different levels to the same position. Do you recommend that you lay out what are the skills and accomplishments and performance objectives of each level, so you can then tell your internal team, hey, you're currently at a 2, so if you can acquire these skills and train on these skills, you can get to this new comp range, which is a 3. Mm-hmm. Does that also allow you to give you the freedom to then bring in someone as a 4 who stretches that comp range even farther? Mm-hmm. So you like that? Is that, you think, a best practice?
Yeah, and I highly recommend, documenting it, having it. And everybody hates job descriptions. You don't have to have, job descriptions that are volumes and volumes, but at least a page and a half to distinguish the requirements, the expectations for each of those roles. Because that is a great skill for the recruiter to have when you're hiring for that job. But to assess their performance and all that. I'm sorry. Yeah. No,
so that's great. I mean, that really aligns with, in our world, Titus, we believe in performance objectives and clearly articulating them per position, so you can align that with why you even have the role. And then everyone's transparent on how they're being managed as well.